Greetings, all. Today I'm coming to you with a bit of a kerfuffle from the literary community that took place last month in regards to an agent named Hilary Harwell who used to be at KT Literary. She wrote, "Just read a query that was essentially the road meets deliverance #YA, and now I want someone to write this for me, please." Someone responded, "With respect, do you not see how it's actually kind of insidious for an agent with industry influence to reject a querying writer with no power and then try to get someone else to write their concept but better just because they didn't use those specific comps?" Then someone asked, "But not the querier." Hilary says, "Hi, no. The author did not pitch it as such, nor was the opening strong enough." So instead of saying to this person, "I love this concept, I love so many things about it, but it isn't strong enough for me," she didn't go back and say, we could do an R&R, which is a revise and resubmit. Just try to revise it, maybe I'll work with you, and then we can see if we can get this off the ground, because it's a very original or good or whatever concept for me, and I would love this. No, instead, she's basically like, you know what, I'm just going to take this writer's idea, and I'm going to try to pitch it to someone else. And even though you can't copyright ideas, and there are reasons for that, this is still a huge no-no and rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. So there was a bit of an uproar, and she had deleted it and then deleted her Twitter account. But the internet is forever a lot of times, and she kept getting backlash. So I have two things to read to you on this slide. And one says, "If you are worried about copyright infringement or theft of your ideas, perhaps working with an independent editor or consultant is not right for you at this time. I can only assure you that I will never share, expose, disclose, or otherwise use in any fashion, public or private, any of the materials that you send to me without your written permission. The most successful relationships are built on trust, and I require yours if we are to work together successfully. Please check out the following blog post for more information." This is from Hilary, talking about how she will not disclose or use anything without your permission, but she will swipe your idea if she likes it and try to give it to someone else. And the second thing says, "We at KT Literary have decided to part ways with an agent whose public statements directly contradict our values and the trust we work to build with our clients. We are reaching out to affected clients to discuss their representation options and ensure continued support. Thank you for your patience and understanding." So, apparently KT was tagged enough times to say, yeah, you know what, we better get rid of her. I don't know if it was damage control. I don't know if they really do espouse those ideas. I know KT Literary is respected. But we move on because someone said, "Do they sell services?" Someone else replies, "She does," as in Hilary. She's on Readsy, gives the link, and then says, "Wonder for how long, sigh." When I was doing the research the last few days, I think, of last month, she was still up and running, but I don't know about now. If you have any information, you could always comment below and let me know. So she might still be out there. And the thing is, eventually, she might be able to get another agency to take her on and look at her, or she might be able to, under a different name, come back to Readsy or a different place. Because as long as she doesn't let people know, the internet can be a very anonymous frontier for people like her. But for now, she's gone in a professional capacity as far as linked to KT Literary. However, I want to discuss some of the things that popped up from this, because this is a wider issue than Hilary. Yes, this was public and everything, and the biggest, fallout from it, but it happens more often than we think. So the first thread on the left side says, "Unsurprisingly, many agents are denouncing Hilary's actions and others are attempting to do damage control, but even some of those agents are admitting that these practices are not entirely unheard of within the industry, which raises questions like, how many agents take queries with synopses and chapter samples and pass them on to their existing clients as inspiration for their next book? How many agents and authors take the queries and use them as ideas for their own next book? How many agents do the exact same thing as Hilary Harwell, but aren't so blatantly obvious about it and get away with it? If agents like Hilary Harwell can be employed at agencies such as reputable as KT Literary and still do this, what trust is there in smaller agencies? I don't think it involves smaller agencies, actually. I think it's just agencies. Certain people, since you can't copyright ideas, because ideas can get so broad that it wouldn't benefit anybody from. Okay, let's give the example of a zombie romance. If you have a romance, like in a zombie apocalypse situation at all, you'd be like, oh, you can't have a romance in a zombie apocalypse situation because that's basically my book. And you can go so broad, that means anybody who does the first of anything would get that entire concept forever. It doesn't really behoove the literary community or people or readers, anybody in the community at all, to have that kind of thing happen. But you're supposed to be able to trust that agents and editors aren't going to start stealing your ideas out from under you. Well, even though it's not illegal, it's technically immoral. And in some industries, it would be a horrible thing to do to someone. You're not supposed to be able to copyright those kind of concepts. So someone else said, had this happened to me once and it feels a certain kind of way. Someone else replied, you would see me on the news if that happened. Holy fuck. The first person replied, if it happened now, I'd probably have the confidence to be more vocal about it. But back then I was still very much in that state of nervousness and self-doubt that many querying authors find themselves. Even now I'm still very aware of the power differential. And that's another thing. If you make a stink about someone taking your idea, one, it's very hard to prove. So you'll look like just a very insecure author who is seeing a coincidence as theft. And nobody's going to want to work with you if you're that kind of insecure. But there's a saying that's kind of funny, but it's also a little bit true at points. And it's just because you're paranoid doesn't mean you're not right, or doesn't mean they're not out to get you. So at points, yeah, somebody can say, hey, they stole my idea, and they did, but how are you going to prove theft of an idea? If they change just enough, or if they do belong to an agency or a press or something that is reputable, they're going to be like, oh, there's no way prestigious agent number 725 is going to steal your idea, unpublished author. You're not Stephen King. So, yeah, it's kind of messed up. So another thread says, there was one agent I think last year, rather recently, that did something like this. It was more egregious. They like to pitch online, but wanted it to be white instead of people of color, I think, and tagged one of their authors to make it for them, making everyone rage at them, as rightfully they should have. I don't remember this part right here. So someone else said, Jesus Christ, that's absolutely appalling. I hope they're no longer working. They certainly don't deserve to be. The original poster said it shut down the entire pitch event, which was supposed to be cheery and joyful and a celebration of the ID, which made it all the worse if I remember correctly. Then another person said in a different point, the only reason I'm on Twitter is because I found that an agent who rejected my query posted it on Twitter to mock it with other agents. At in-person pitch contests, when authors and agents are behind a screen to make authors more comfortable, agents mock them and make fun of the authors. I don't know where they heard that second part, but can you imagine learning that somebody took your query and just blasted it all over Twitter just to make fun of it? Yeah, okay, so that person's query might not have been the strongest query, but you don't shit on it. If you don't want to lift someone up, then don't say anything. Then just give it back. You know, if you need to be that kind of petty ruckspin, where you are laughing at it with other agents and stuff, get together at a bar or a restaurant over cocktails and giggle about how bad people are. But don't do it publicly. I wish you wouldn't do it at all. But if you're going to be petty and mean and you're a professional, keep it behind the scenes. Keep it on lockdown with people where you know they won't out you for you being a brat or you being just a wicked asshole. Just keep it behind the scenes where you can just giggle. And it's like what they tell authors when they tell us, oh, if you got a bad rejection and stuff, you don't blast the publisher, you don't blast the agent online or the editor, whatever. You complain to your friends, you cry to your friends. If you feel jilted because someone else won an award you wanted, you don't go screaming about how it was unfair. What you do is you talk to your friends and family or your psychiatrist, and you talk privately through the matter with people who won't out you as being a dick or insecure or whatever. And I really think we need to tell agents and editors and publishers this as well, that, you don't go and make fun of people for shit. If something isn't good, you just say, hey, we can work on this, or no thanks. How difficult is that? So then we have, it's the shadiest of practices. So many literary agents get away with it, though, as they're seen as untouchable. Right. Like I said, who's going to believe that first-time author, or even that second or third-time author, that someone messed with them? Then someone else responded, if a comparable thing happened, at work, IG, if I explored A's intellectual property, then went to B asking them to do the same, two things would happen. My employer would be sued and liable. I would be named co-defendant even though I had not signed on to an NDA, and I'd still be sacked. That's because most industries, when you have an idea, it's supposed to be protected and sacred. Ours, no. Because everybody always says to you, there are no original ideas, right? They're always like, oh, there are no golden ideas. Nobody ever deals with that, blah, blah, blah. So it's all that kind of thing. Since people are like, oh, every idea has already been done, how are you going to say X, Y, and Z? But yeah, other companies and other types of places don't actually follow that. So it's just basically the creative arts, isn't it? The no new concept under the sun, so shut your mouth type thing. Okay, so then it says, I get that you can't copyright an idea, right? But as an agent, acquisitions editor, whoever, did they not consider for a second that it might be unethical to share this idea publicly? It's very unethical, actually. They should either work with the author to bring it up to their standards or shut up and move on. Exactly, I totally agree. Another person said, she felt comfortable enough to post that publicly, so it must be common, at least in her circle. That brings up something else interesting, because who was in her circle at the time? Other agents from KT Literary. Interesting. I wonder what's said in private. Avoid toxic predatory agents like Hilary Harwell. Shameful. I agree, but the thing is, Hilary up until this point, for the most part, was held up as reputable because she was in a reputable agency. So to say, avoid people like her, and then say, well, she was with a reputable agency, that doesn't track. How do you avoid? Especially since authors have almost no power in the publishing process. How do you call that out? Like I said, you'll be blacklisted a lot of times, and you'll be labeled as petty, jealous, paranoid, even if they did steal your idea. And then if they did steal your idea, they would still have people defending them, either people who work with them, who are other agents you don't want to piss off, or authors who are hopeful to work with agents like her or someone at her agency. So you're going to have a lot of people being like, you're blowing this out of proportion. They're basically going to gaslight you, even though it's shitty, even though it sucks. So idea theft happens, but it's not illegal. KT Literary fired Hilary, so they're praised, and they were. Oh, thank God they're not working with her anymore. But, okay, here's where I switch gears. Here's where you might say I'm overblowing it. Okay, this is the last slide. But I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the stirrings I saw in regards to KT Literary as far as their other agents go. Some people would say don't bring this up, but I think it underscores a more pressing issue. So the first thing says, okay, so remember Savannah's, that's another KT Literary agent. So writing is a mere passion. Agenting is a job rant, and her follow-up, and Hilary's other grossness, all KT agents. It's not hard to imagine emotionally immature adults congregating for comfort, EOSI. Then someone else said, When I went to her profile, it said KT Literary, and I feel like I keep seeing red flags from their agents. Someone else replied, "You're not wrong. Last year, another of their agents made the Passion Not Professional post about querying authors." Okay, that was Savannah. And then on the other side, it says, "KT Literary is an agency y'all should avoid. Hilary claims that grief in books isn't wanted." Okay, to be fair, I've seen that a lot from agents and publishers. The same thing with like, oh, disability and chronic illness and cancer. We don't need any of those narratives either. As a matter of fact, when my book Domestic Bodies got rejected by one of the many people who rejected it, I heard, "We've seen this before, revise this book without the illness and disability in it." So that's not usually unheard of. Chelsea is antagonistic towards neurodivergent writers and anyone who holds her accountable. I remember something about this, but I don't remember. I think it was like a response to one of the neurodivergent authors and how bitchy Chelsea was, but I don't really remember the context of it. I can't dig it up, and I'll tell you why in a minute. Okay, and then Savannah thinks that writers don't need to pay their bills with their writing. Yep, that's right. The writer who gives everything to the agency and everything like that deserves nothing. It's almost like, I want to say, Japanese idol culture, where the people who get paid first are the agents, the costume designers, the choreographers, and then after everything, it trickles down for the rest. Even though the person on stage is the one singing, dancing, doing interviews, signing autographs, getting all this other stuff going, it's everyone else that deserves to get paid first. So that's kind of what that attitude reminds me of. Like, oh, it's the agents who work hard. Authors are just playing. Writers just throw words on the page. Yeah, okay. Okay, be the next author millionaire and then talk to me about that. And then the last thing says, KT Literary, apparently there's been warnings about their other agents, which disheartens me. So I want you to take a look at this and remember that it isn't just that there can be one bad agent, but there can be many at an agency. So just because they said, "Oh damn, Hilary was too public too far this time and we have to get rid of her," doesn't mean that there aren't other agents in that agency that also don't have really bad ideas, really shitty behavior, but are still cushioned until they do something horrible. I know a lot of their agents have actually deleted tweets immediately after receiving backlash to kind of cover up their asses. And I know a lot of people do that. And I have not found the like Wayback Machine type stuff where I can actually go back in here and find out what was said or to who about what with some of these people. But I do remember at least a couple of these different things flying around a while ago, like a couple of years, I want to say. I don't really remember. So if I were all of you, I would stay away from KT Literary entirely. There are a lot of other agencies out there, some better, hopefully a lot better, some worse, undoubtedly. But the thing is, I have to put my caveats here. I'm not a lawyer, but always read your contracts and always have someone read your contracts. The thing is, we use agents in place of IP lawyers, which is intellectual property lawyers. And I know you have to pay a lawyer up front, and you don't have to do that with a literary agent. But with a literary agent, they get 15% of what you do. And that includes, like, if you have a totally different genre of book they don't want to represent, and you end up selling it with a different agent for a one-off project, they still want that 15%. Because even though you used a different agent, they're still your main agent. Or if they say, well, maybe you should like self-publish this, I don't want to touch this. So you hire an editor, you get it all ready, you publish it, you make a few $1,000s or whatever off of your self-published book that they didn't help you with, they didn't touch at all. And they're like, okay, where's my 15%? I'm still your agent. And they get your money from your publisher before you do, so they can take their 15%, which means, not exclusively, but it does mean that they can screw you out of money. And you won't know if it's the publisher doing it, if it's an accident, if it's the agency doing it. There are just so many different reasons. I don't personally like agents at all. And I'm not trying to bash them. I hear some of them are worth their weight in gold and they're awesome and they go to the trenches for you and everything like that. But there are so many agents where I've heard horror stories, not just stealing your ideas, not just stealing your money. The contracts can be very hard to get out of, just like with a publisher. It's very disheartening. Agents don't have to have any training as a lawyer, so they can just look at a contract and say, well, this is what I think it means. And yes, they will have some kind of training and whatnot, but almost anyone can hang out their shingle and call themselves an agent, call themselves a developmental editor, call themselves anything. There are certain things where you have to pass a test, but it's not like being a realtor. You don't have to have something before you can hang out your shingle and say, yes, I'm an agent. So they don't have to have any kind of, law background. They have to have good contacts with presses and publishers, which is great. But then you have to remember that part of their negotiation could literally be, well, I have somebody coming up and I want you to treat them well. So this other author who I don't really care as much about, I'm not going to fight you as hard. Because everybody's like, why would they not fight as hard for the best deal, for the most amount of rights to be retained so you could work them out later to get even more money? And it's partly because agents have relationships with these publishers. So there is always going to be some give and take involved with getting a good deal. And the thing with the good deal is you might become somebody who gets a less good deal because there's going to be somebody else later that they want to build goodwill with, and you're basically the goodwill. So them giving them a cheaper deal is basically for their benefit to grease the wheels next time for a different author or to expand trust with that particular press. And I don't want to sound so gloomy about it, but you honestly don't know. You don't know the status of everything. And people who say, why would an agent do that? You're not the only client the agent has, are you? If you're one out of, let's say 30 clients, if you're one out of 30, you can be someone that takes the hit for them to increase their standing, to get a better connection with whatever house or whatever. So just be careful. I know I'm rambling a bit, but be careful. There are so many things I've heard, either in whisper networks or in publications that get swept under years later about all the stuff that's happened. And don't try to negotiate a contract alone, ever. Know what you're signing, but still get help. So be careful out there. And let this just be a cautionary tale. I have plenty more as to know what you're doing and go slow with an agent. And especially as a disabled author, I know that with people who don't have a lot of energy and have to deal with chronic pain, doctor's appointments, that an agent can look like a godsend because they're the ones sending out, they're helping you edit before you hit on, you go on submission with your books. And I know that's very helpful, but that can also mean that you're too busy doing other things to really connect with what your agent is doing. So because you need them as a disabled author could also be more to your detriment because they might get away with more if they're not a good one. So just be aware, eyes wide open, read everything, look over every contract with a lawyer or someone who has a lot of freaking knowledge. Don't rush into anything. Don't think you need an agent to be successful. There are a lot of places that have, even like the Big Five, have like imprints that take direct submissions without an agent, and you can basically backdoor into the Big Five that way if that's your dream. The numbers for first-time author advances are abysmal, and we should talk about that someday. and how that abysmal money still gets 15% to your agent. So just be careful, and I'll see you in the next one. Okay? Bye, everyone.